Alright guys, this is kind of gonna piece this one together. I accidentally deleted the footage from before making this, but this is the my wood stove out in the garage of the shop. I had all the videos of step by step of what I was doing. This is a wood furnace, but working on it, rebuilding it. So said I lost or accidentally deleted the footage while deleting some other old footage. I've been working on this for a little bit of time here, just off and on to make it by, but said I accidentally deleted all that, so I'm gonna kind of piece this together and kind of explain some of it, how I did it on part of it, and then putting the last little bit together here. So if you guys have questions, I'll be able to maybe help you out, draw it out. I don't know. Hi guys, I'm gonna try this again. I accidentally deleted some footage, so missing a lot of this project here, but out working in the garage on the wood stove. This was a wood furnace that was actually in our house as a kid growing up. My uncle got it from my dad, put it in his shop, and made a heat exchanger for it and whatnot. And the outside shell he had taken off for part of his stuff, and I got it back from him when he no longer needed it or wanted to use it. So I'm rebuilding it here. Got rid of the old one and putting this one in. I welded a plate across the bottom of the stove as a base, seal that up. He had replaced this back plate. I'm assuming it was warped pretty bad, or I'm not sure, but he had cut off the old one and welded on a new one, and it wasn't as wide as the original one was, so I had to widen it. I welded a piece of scrap on there to widen that on that side, and I didn't have any more, so that's actually a 1/4 inch plate that I had. A lot heavier than I needed it or wanted it. I didn't really want it as wide. I wish it was narrower. That takes a lot of heat out of the back of that stove. As you can see, it's starting to change the color with the sheet on the outside, but not that big a deal. I welded, probably have some wind noise, the fan is on. I welded some 1/2 inch angle on the inside edges on all 4 corners. So I have them running up and down here. Took that sheet, that's just a 20 gauge, 18 gauge. I'm not sure, 18 or 20 gauge, maybe 22 gauge sheet there. Just sheet metal, and I've used some self-tapping screws and screwed them in. I have some like gasket maker stuff on the back side there just to help seal that off a little bit, not make it, it's not absolutely perfectly airtight, but a lot better than a lot of holes. I folded the corners over. I have a piece of angle across, running across at the top there and here, folding that over. I'm going to trim this back a little bit here across the top. I have trimmed this piece and this piece. I'm going to finish folding that over. Just got this manifold here done. It's 13 inches wide. I have 2 8-inch collars on there. I have another elbow I'm going to put on here to be able to change directions of that. I have it pop riveted to it. I drilled holes and pop riveted it in, and then I pull this off here. I folded the tabs over just to hold it in, but like I said, it's pop riveted in, actually holding it together, holding it in, making a good seal. I marked it out on the back to kind of figure out where everything was at. Marked the center of the hole, marked it 8 inches So 4 inches off the center, 4 inches off the center, and then 4 inches off the center, 4 inches off the center. So all 4 corners of the circle. Flipped those collars over and sat them down on top of those lines. Where I met where I marked all 4 inches away from the center on all 4 corners. And then I traced it out with a Sharpie, and I actually used both collars on both holes to see the offset, because they're always bent. You know, sitting at the store, transporting them home, they always get bent a little bit. So I used both of them and kind of split the difference between all of them, or between both of these. So I knew that I was fairly close to being a perfect circle. And then I was using some shears, or electric shears, Harbor Freight things. And to cut them out, which they don't work very well, they need to be longer. So I just used the grinder with a cutoff disc in it and kind of laid it at an angle. So it's kind of at an angle coming across the metal there, and ground that circle, kind of working my way around, grind through that, so I didn't make straight lines, kind of using the curve of the blade to kind of cut them out, and then pop rivet those in there. So once I get that on here, it's going to set right down the center. So I'm going to cut this piece back to where this overlaps, about an inch and a half or so. Grab a tape measure here. So it's going to overlap. I'm going to cut that about 2 inches. That's 2 inches there. So cut this piece. Cut the piece on the stove on both pieces back to where they overlap 2 inches on here. And this piece is going to set down on top of them so that it'll hold that straight. Because there is no strength in that. I lift that up, it bows slightly. But the pieces on the side pieces will have that strength and that bend in there. It won't want it, once you bend that at an angle, they don't. I'll show you here. So once I bend this in here, it's got that piece in there that's holding that straight. So it'll bow, but it don't bow much. So when I put that on there, I actually hold it, it'll stiffen it up by a lot. And I'll put those elbows on there to direct that heat out of here. And then probably take a piece of angle iron, set it across here. I might put it in there prior to and kind of weld it in, and then be able to pop rivet or some self-tapping screws. And this had fans on it originally. Like I said, he replaced that back piece, and those fans, the original fans actually burnt out on us when we were growing up many years ago. We'd put a squirrel cage fan on the side of the wood stove here, cut a hole in the side for it, but I said when I rebuilt it, I figured I'll make it. So I ordered this little, pull this piece off here. Ordered this fan offline. It's a Dayton, or Dayton? I think it's a Dayton fan. It's 312 CFM. From what I could find, the furnaces you can get today, they push out about 370 or so. So this is just a little less than, but it was like 70 bucks, I think. 100 bucks maybe with shipping. I don't even think it was 100 bucks. Wired in. I got this wired into a switch, but it's a piece of insulation wrap, old piece from work. It's aluminum, and it keeps the heat off that motor so it don't get hot. Might find a way to wrap it or make something else for a heat shield so this don't take any heat out of that stove. And this piece here is actually cold, and this will be cold, but that electric motor with no air movement across it actually gets a little warm. So put that on there, that actually stays cool. I had to widen it. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up the mark here. Right about here is the bottom of the firebox, and it angles up across here and across there. So I had to widen that because the fan wasn't as wide as the stove was. So I made these little tubes. Had a guy at work cut them out for me. I traced everything out on, made templates on them, and they cut this plate here, and then I traced out the flange to where the off the motor, and they traced them out. They cut them out. I drilled the holes in them and then welded it all together, and then cut the holes in the back of the stove to slide through there. Of course, this was a lot worse than that side because that's 1/4 inch plate plus I think that's 1/8 inch plate on the back there. So I used the torch that out, got it the best I could, welded them in there, got that sealed all the way around. And then I had a little bit of leakage here because of course it wasn't absolutely perfect, so I just wrapped it up in the duct tape, the aluminum foil tape, just to seal that up a little bit, just to make sure I wasn't losing any out of here. I got that wired to a switch so I can turn it on and off. I want to be able to put a thermostat in there so where I can leave the power on and it'll come on once that heat chamber gets about 100 degrees, and it'll come on, and then when it gets below 100 degrees it'll shut off. So when I leave for the night or whenever, I'm not letting it get hot or leaving that fan on the whole time. Eventually burn the motor out from overuse. It did have kind of a damper control on it originally, but it of course probably got broke over time, so he made a new plate and was actually burning waste oil in here, and he made a plate for here that had an air hook up to blow it, hook an air hose, shop air up to it for a draft, which was partially because of his heat exchanger he had. I don't have it here anymore. It's about 2-inch pipe, and he ran the chimney up into a box and had about 1.5 or 2-inch pipe running across it. Had, I don't know, 12 or so of them into another box. Then he ran that, and then he hooked that to the chimney to take up to the chimney. Well, you don't get draft very well when you try to force that through some tiny little holes. And 12 of those 2-inch little things, like, you're losing a lot of draft, plus a lot of soot because you're getting a lot of you're taking a lot of heat out of them. So you don't, yeah, you recover a lot of heat from some of those chimney Mr. Heat. I don't know what they are. You hook them in your chimney, have a little fan in them. They take a lot of heat out of there, but once you cool that smoke, you'll get a lot of soot. You'll have a lot of soot build up. So he of course had that air hose on there to help with the draft, which did not really help at all, I'm sure. I think that's probably why he wanted to get rid of it. So I just cut a new plate to put on there to block the holes off. So I cut that out and just bolted on there. Of course, warped a little bit, so I had to put some sealant on there to seal that. So I'll get this piece bent here and marked out and cut out and trim that back, and then get it attached, and I'll show you the end result. But I wish I had the rest of the footage. I had some time lapse of putting the side pieces on and marking it all, cutting it all out, kind of showing the steps, but I think you guys can get the kind of see what I've done with the angle iron and everything. So I'll get the that back piece bent, trimmed, and this piece mounted, and then I'll show you. Alright, I got that top manifold piece there cut back and installed. I just trim that back there so where it's an 1 3/4 overlap on both sides, and then I just drilled the holes and pop riveted in there. I got 5 on each side right now. Got the elbows installed. Blows the heat out really good now. And a lot of force behind it. I probably won't need the fan anymore. Might still need that fan around, or that fan around, kind of move air around the shop here, but that'll take a lot of that heat right off the stove and blow it out into out across the shop and be able to warm it up a little faster and not so much heat loss through the roof. So we'll test it out when it actually gets real cold. I might, so this has, you feel some air coming out here. I mean, it's not sealed yet, but I don't know if I'm gonna put a piece of angle across that or find some way to seal that up there, front and back. Of course, it wasn't perfect putting it together, so I might trim this back with the cutoff wheel on the grinder. Just kind of trim that back there, and then same thing, mount a piece of angle iron across there if it has too much air loss, but there's only a little bit here. Most of this is sealed up pretty good just from gravity holding it down, and just a little bit across the front. But better than what it was.